కృపావార్త కార్యక్రమమునకు స్వాగతం. నేటి ధ్యానాంశము సువార్త, గాస్పెల్. అయ్యో, సువార్తను ప్రకటింపకపోయిన యెడల నాకు శ్రమ. కొరింథీయులకు రాసినటువంటి మొదటి పత్రిక 9వ అధ్యాయము 16వ వచనం. Woe unto me if I do not preach the gospel. 1 Corinthians chapter 9 verse 16. నీ సువార్త చెప్ప శక్తి నీయము, నాథా యేసు క్రీస్తు రక్షక. వందనం బొనర్తుమో ప్రభో ప్రభో, వందనం బొనర్తుమో ప్రభో ప్రభో, వందనంబు తండ్రి తనయ శుద్ధాత్ముడా, వందనంబులందుకో ప్రభో, వందనంబులందుకో ప్రభో. ఎన్ని నాళ్ళు ధరను మమ్ము కాచియు, కన్న తండ్రి మించి ఎప్పుడు బ్రోచియు, ఎన్నలేని దీవెనలిడు నన్న యేసువా, ఎన్ని రెట్లు స్తోత్రములివిగో. వందనం బొనర్తుమో ప్రభో ప్రభో, వందనం బొనర్తుమో ప్రభో ప్రభో, వందనంబు తండ్రి తనయ శుద్ధాత్ముడా, వందనంబులందుకో ప్రభో, వందనంబులందుకో ప్రభో. దేవమాదుకాలు సేతులెల్లను, సేవకాళి తనువు దినములన్నీయు, నీవసగు వెండి పసిడి జ్ఞానమంతయు, నీ సేవాకై అంగీకరించుమా. వందనం బొనర్తుమో ప్రభో ప్రభో, వందనం బొనర్తుమో ప్రభో ప్రభో, వందనంబు తండ్రి తనయ శుద్ధాత్ముడా, వందనంబులందుకో ప్రభో, వందనంబులందుకో ప్రభో. కోత కొరకు దాస జనమునంపుము, ఈతరి మాలోటు పాట్లు తీర్చుము, ఆతకంబులెల్ల మాపి భీతి భాపుము, ఖ్యాతి నొందో నీతి సూర్యుడా, ఆతకంబులెల్ల మాపి భీతి బాపుము, ఖ్యాతి నొందో నీతి సూర్యుడా. వందనం బొనర్తుమో ప్రభో ప్రభో, వందనం బొనర్తుమో ప్రభో ప్రభో, వందనంబు తండ్రి తనయ శుద్ధాత్ముడా, వందనంబులందుకో ప్రభో, వందనంబులందుకో ప్రభో. మా సభలను పెంచి పెద్ద చేయుము, నీ సువార్త చెప్ప శక్తి నీయుము, మోసపుచ్చునంధకారమంత త్రోయుము, యేసు కృపన్ కుమ్మరించుము, యేసు కృపన్ కుమ్మరించుము. వందనం బొనర్తుమో ప్రభో ప్రభో, వందనం బొనర్తుమో ప్రభో ప్రభో, వందనంబు తండ్రి తనయ శుద్ధాత్ముడా, వందనంబులందుకో ప్రభో, వందనంబులందుకో ప్రభో. What a meaningful hymn. Usually, this hymn will be sung on special occasions like the New Year's Day or the church anniversary day function, thanking God for guarding, protecting, blessing all through the past years and seeking His blessings for the future. Vandanambanartamo Prabho, Vandanambanartamo Prabho. The theme of today's lesson is Gospel Suvarta. అయ్యో, సువార్తను నేను ప్రకటింపకపోయిన ఎడల నాకు శ్రమ. Oh, unto me, if I do not preach the gospel. Who is telling this? In our school days, when we write Hindi exams, we will be asked the question called Sandarbha Sahit Vyakhya. This preaching is basically meant for children. There are many learned audience, there are many knowledgeable saints enriched with the word of the Lord. But this message, this lesson, this preaching is meant for children. Teach the child the way he should go, lest he follows that path all through his life, so that he will not depart from the word that he has learned all through his life. What remains with our children forever? The good that the parents teach to the children. Recently, the preacher was blessed with a visit to ISKCON temple. One of his friends felt pity on the preacher and took him to ISKCON temple with his own expenses. When the preacher do not have auto fare also, he was invited to ISKCON temple to spend time with his friend. And the preacher went to ISKCON temple. And there was a preacher by name Prabhu. And the preacher was preaching and he emphasized one thing: we have to teach our children so that the good they learned will remain with them all through their life. The verses that we teach to our children from Gita, they will be stored in their heart so that they will be a source of guidance to them in their future. There is good everywhere to receive, to learn. मजहब नहीं सिखाता आपस में बैर रखना, मजहब नहीं सिखाता आपस में बैर रखना. The religion doesn't teach animosity, irrespective of the Jewish faith or Islamic faith. What a great poet. Muhammad Iqbal. मजहब नहीं सिखाता आपस में बैर रखना, मजहब नहीं सिखाता आपस में बैर रखना. संदर्भ सहित व्याख्या means a sentence will be given in the question and the student has to comment upon the sentence from which lesson that sentence was given and who spoke those words. Of course, we are listening so much about the movies. What is the talk of the town today? What is the new thing in the news? What is making the headlines? Kalki AD has made more than 1000 crores at the box office. Isn't it? If we ask our school going children, they will tell more about Kalki. They will tell more about the latest news. What is the talk of the town today? India has won the World Cup. If we ask our children, they are so much enriched with knowledge these days because it was not so few decades ago when the preacher was a school going child. He was not exposed to such explosion of information. 3 decades ago or 4 decades ago, the only source of information is All India Radio, isn't it? And later on, we have Doordarshan, television. And there used to be only one channel from the New Delhi, only one channel from the New Delhi, and that too for a very, very limited time. Broadcasting in television used to take place, and not all families are so rich to afford a television. Having a television those days, I'm talking about uh, 1990s, 1980s. During those days, having a television in a home is a luxury. Forget about remote areas, forget about villages. In villages, all through the village, they will have at least hardly, not at least, they will hardly have one television so that all the people in the village can gather together in the night time for 1 hour or something like that and have the privilege of listening to the news. These were the pleasures of the yesteryear. Imagine, few centuries ago, I'm talking about first century AD, during apostolic times. Where are these mass media? Where are these modes of communication? Where are these transportation facilities? In those days, the gospel, the words spoken by Jesus Christ were spread from shore to shore. How can this be possible? With a human effort, it is not possible. As Jesus Christ has spoken, has told, with God all things are possible. And also to those that believe in God, all things are possible. The words of Jesus Christ gives encouragement, irrespective of any faith, whether it is Gita or Ramayana or Mahabharata or Quran or Torah. Again, here comes a question. It's quite an unfamiliar term, no? Torah. Students, particularly youngsters, are very inquisitive. When they see something new, they will ask, what is it? Ma. In Hebrew, ma means what? Ma shel shel kha means what is your name? Of course, the preacher is blessed to be in Israel. Of course, the Israel that the preacher has seen is very, very different than the Israel the preacher is currently seeing. It's heart breaking. The Israel that the preacher knows is far, far better than the current Israel that the preacher is showing. It's the same story. The story of Israel has not changed. It's the same story. After the exile to Babylon, when the Jewish people returned to Israel, their heart was broken. Their heart was broken to see the temple. Of course, the temple was rebuilt. Of course, the temple was rebuilt. Of course, the temple will be rebuilt. There is no doubt in that. Heaven and earth will pass away, but not my word. భూమియు ఆకాశమును గతించిపోవును కానీ నా మాటలు అనడను గతించిపోవు అని చెప్పి ఏసై చెప్పారు కదా. ద టెంపుల్ విల్ బి బిల్ట్. ఈ దేవాలయమును పడగొట్టుడి, మూడు దినములలోగా ఈ దేవాలయం నేను తిరిగి కట్టేదను. Make this temple well. I will rebuild the temple in 3 days. The words of Jesus Christ used to give consolation, comfort, peace, joy, wisdom to the broken-hearted, to those that are sick, to those that are wounded, to those that are downtrodden, to those that are suffering injustice. All around us, don't we see injustice? All around us, don't we see suffering? Suffering is getting increased many fold, the human suffering. These are all foretold in the Bible. Bible is not the historical account of man and the creation of man and the existence of man on the planet Earth, but also the book of the future. Bible talks very clearly about the future happenings. For example, the book of Revelation, composed by John the Apostle. In the Bible, we have the same name for different people, isn't it? It's not strange. Even in India, we do have people, different people with the same name. Likewise, in the Bible also, we have different people with the same name. So it is very, very necessary that when we say a name, we should also give some details of the name. Otherwise, the names can be mistaken. John the Baptist is different than John the Apostle. John the Baptist is different than the John the Apostle. Of course, these two great men are contemporary. Contemporary. There are many contemporary people, isn't it? Sir C.V. Raman and Enrico Fermi, contemporary people. Professor B. Vishwanathan sir, Professor C.N.R. Rao sir, Professor Harun Gedenken sir, Professor Stoddart, Professor Caroline Bertizil, Professor Meldal, Professor Sharpless. These are all contemporary people. We are really privileged to have such great scientists with us during these days. This is what is called contemporary people belonging to the same period. These are contemporary people. It's very difficult to have great people in the same time, and indeed, we are blessed. During the times of Jesus Christ, also people used to say, prophets used to say, indeed, we are blessed that we are in the times of Jesus Christ. But one important thing is there is nothing like the time without Jesus Christ. Many misunderstand that Jesus Christ was on the planet Earth only for 33 and a half years. And many think that there is much history before Jesus Christ, there is much time after Jesus Christ. And that is why we say BC and AD, before Christ. Likewise, Anna Domini, after Christ, isn't it? Time we divide for our convenience. In India also we have different times, isn't it? Each nation for that matter will have different ways of dividing time, different ways of preparing their own calendar, preparing their own clocks, isn't it? Israel have their own clock. The peculiar thing regarding Israel is that Israel is a very small country, and many astonishing things the preacher has seen in Israel. One astonishing thing is Bible coming to reality. Whatever the preacher has read in the Bible, of course, the preacher has read very little of Gita. Of course, the preacher has read very little regarding Quran, but by the grace of God, the preacher could read the Holy Bible completely at least thrice, and it has been a great blessing. Especially the 13 books written by Paul are a great blessing to the preacher. The preacher received the grace of Jesus Christ after reading the 13 books by Paul. Rather, the preacher would say 14, even though the historians and the experts and scholars in Bible tend to say that Paul has written 13 out of 27 books. Somehow the preacher had a different perspective. It's not contradictory, it may be an addition of knowledge. The preacher strongly believes that Paul has written 14 out of 27 books. 14 out of 27. One book matters. 13 out of 27 is less than half. 14 out of 27 is more than half. That is the differentiating factor. One mark matters. That is what I used to tell to my students at GSFC University. While the preacher has been a faculty at GSFC University, the students are highly talented, and the students always used to quarrel for marks and used to argue with the preacher. I deserve more marks than the other student. Why the other student has got 1 mark extra while I was given 1 mark lower? Of course, the difference in the marks between various students is not more than 1 or 2 marks, but they understood that 1 mark matters. The finishing line reaching, if it is delayed by microseconds or milliseconds, the prize will be lost, isn't it? The prize will be lost. That is why Paul says, run so that you will win the prize. Run to win the prize. We should not run in vain, isn't it? We are in a race. Each one of us is given the opportunity in this world to run the race. We have to run so that we win the prize. That is why Paul says, Paul has utilized his time on the planet Earth very well. One thing peculiar about Paul is his eyes are open to invisible things. Most of us, for most of us, only the visible things are visible and invisible things are invisible. For Paul, it is not so. For Paul, the invisible things were made visible. That is why Paul is Paul. That is why Paul could write 14 out of 27 books. No other author of the chapters, individual chapters of the Bible, has contributed so richly to the Bible, but for Paul. The first five books of the Bible are called the Law. For convenience, the Bible scholars divide the Bible into the Old Testament and the New Testament. The New Testament has 27 chapters, and out of these 27 chapters, 14 chapters were composed by none other than Paul. The previous name of Paul is Shaul, typical Jewish name, Shaul. Shaul is a very familiar name in Hebrew language. As the preacher has told, the preacher has seen many astonishing things in Israel. First thing is the Israel that the preacher has seen for 6 long years from 2010 to 2016 is very, very different from the Israel the preacher is seeing. Why? Why means we are reading the last chronicles of the planet Earth. As far as Jewish calendar is concerned, thus we are close to the completion of the 600 years, 600 years, 5,874 or 75. I do not recollect exactly. To reach the 600th year, we are very close to reaching the 600th year. Means, of course, it may take 2 centuries to reach the 600th year as far as the Jewish calendar is concerned, but a century is like yesterday, a century is like one day in the sight of God. These 2 centuries will go very fast, and the day of the Lord, the Shabbat, and the rest promised to the saints is awaiting. This is eternal rest because God is truthful. If, as human beings, we promise something to somebody, we may not be able to deliver because of our inherent deficiencies and weaknesses. But God, when He promises, He will definitely fulfill His promise. And the seventh day is called the Shabbat. This is another remarkable and quite wonderful thing that the preacher has seen. The preacher has read so much about the Bible, and all the 66 books were read completely, at least thrice, by the preacher. And it is recommended that each one of us read the Bible, practice to read the Bible every day, at least one verse. One of the preachers that the preacher has come across has said while he was going to his office and while he was taking his children to his school, while he was on the bus, he used to meditate on one verse at a time per day. Imagine one verse, one word. Today, what is the verse that the preacher is teaching to the little ones, to the children? "Oh, unto me, if I do not preach the gospel." Gospel is, what is gospel? Again, the little ones, children will ask. Ma, in Hebrew, ma means in in India, ma means mother, isn't it? Likewise, in Hebrew, ima means mother. E is added before ma and it is called ima. Ima means mother. In any language, there are some similarities. Basically, all these languages originated from one language, and all the people have originated from one person, the first man, Adam, in whom the breath of the God was breathed. There are many questions for which there is no scientific explanation. The preacher himself has been a chemist, himself has been a renowned researcher. After all, research or scientific investigation or scientific research or science as a pursuit has the objective of finding the truth, whether it is finding God or finding the existence of extraterrestrial life or finding the unknown, isn't it? Very little is known to our naked eye, but there is much that we do not know, isn't it? In one of the books, it's probably by Edward McHenry Bounds, probably. Yeah, it should be Edward McHenry Bounds. Edward McHenry Bounds, McKendree. McHenry is written as MC, capital Kendree, not Dry. Edward McHenry Bounds is known for his prayerful life. Edward McHenry Bounds has written more than 13 books like Paul. Edward McHenry Bounds was a gifted good shepherd, shepherding the church, pastoring the church amidst his own poverty. Whether it is Paul, whether it is Edward McHenry Bounds, or most of the preachers for that matter, have gone through difficult times, tough times, gone through poverty, gone through financial problems. When the preacher, or for that matter, any common person goes through poverty, he should not, he need not think that God is not present. God is not present. God is absent. Our difficulties are not an indicator of the absence of God. One of the believers of God, monks, saints, by name Brother Lawrence, says, good when God gives, nor less if He doesn't give. Afflictions are blessings from the hands of the sovereign Lord. Afflictions are blessings in disguise from the sovereign Lord. For some, it may appear to be a kind of psychological disease, being a psycho, rejoicing in suffering, or rejoicing, asking people to rejoice in their suffering. For some, it may appear to be a mental sickness, a mental disorder. But it was not so with the saints of the Esther that practice really a very, very contentful life, practice a very disciplined life, enslaving their bodies, subjecting their bodies to discipline, being disciplined in the habits of prayer, enslaving their bodies. It is very clear from the Bible, from the words of Paul, that the body seeks many pleasures. The body seeks many pleasures. Yet, wide is the way that leads to destruction. Narrow is the way that leads to life. It all depends on our ultimate destiny. What do we want? As children, as students, as college going students, what do you want? You need to excel in whatever endeavor you take up, whether it is studies, whether it is sports. You should excel, you should be on top, you should run so that you receive the prize. It all depends on our destiny, our target. Narrow is the path that leads to life, broad is the path that leads to death. Everyone has to die one day, isn't it? Death is so real. Likewise, birth is so real. But it is very necessary. Paul was enlightened. Gautam Buddha was enlightened. Asatoma Sadgamaya. Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya. Mrityorma Amritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya. Mrityorma Amritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shanti. Jewish people will say Shalom. मजहब नहीं सिखाता. Again, the problem is khana. Khana here doesn't mean eating food. This is what we should be very, very careful when we speak to uh, children, when we teach a new language. Same word will have different meanings. It all depends on the context. It all depends on the context. Khatha. मजहब नहीं सिखाता. Sikhana means padana. Padana means to teach. Majhab means religion. Majhab nahi sikhata. If someone do not follow our faith, we'll have some animosity with them. ऐसा नहीं करना चाहिए. मजहब नहीं सिखाता. आपस में बैर रखना. मजहब नहीं सिखाता. आपस में बैर रखना. The Israel that is known to the preacher is Jewish and Arabic uh, citizens, people belonging to Jewish faith and Arab faith of Israeli citizenship, used to dwell in peace. There has never been conflict. There has never ever been discrimination. That is what the preacher has seen all through his stay in Israel. There were Arab scholars, there were Jewish scholars, Arab researchers, and Jewish researchers working in the laboratory of Professor Haron Gedenkens, sir, and there has been no distinction based on faith. मजहब नहीं सिखाता. आपस में बैर रखना. मजहब नहीं सिखाता. आपस में बैर रखना. This is what we need to teach our children. Mandir or Masjid. What a beautiful story composed by Munshi Premchand. These are the things that we need to teach our students. The preacher being a Hindu, being a Christian, seeing the love of Muslims, Muslim friends, and their parents. This is the beauty of India. India is known for unity in diversity. The preacher has been in Israel for 6 long years. Of course, it's a tale of serendipity. The preacher has been in Korea for 1 year. Of course, it is another great story of serendipity. The preacher has been in China. Of course, it's a great tale of serendipity. Serendipity means some discovery which is unexpected. If a researcher does an experiment with an intention of getting a specific product, if we were to end up with an entirely different product, entirely different discovery that he has not ever conceived in his mind, and such serendipitous discoveries, such unexpected discoveries are called a tale of serendipity. History testifies the tales of serendipity. The preacher has much to share, much to share, much to share. While he was being appointed as faculty in GSFC University, the administrator of the university, Sri Mahesh Barut sir, was a very wise person. He could recognize the experience the preacher had in various nations, in IIT and in Israel and in Korea and in China. Because you have experience, we will pay the salary that you are asking. That's all he was told. Such a knowledgeable person. Mahesh Barus, sir, probably he is the campus administrator that time. Current designation I do not remember. But why I say this is experience matters. Experience comes with age, isn't it? And much of the things that the preacher has learned are a tale of serendipity. The preacher has never imagined or comprehended or even dreamt for that matter. Dreams are real, isn't it? There is a brain center in IIT Madras. Brain center in IIT Madras. Way back during 2002, during those times, from 2002 to 2006, the preacher was familiar with a great chemist at IIT Madras. His name is uh, Professor Gopinathan, I think. Professor MSG, MS Gopinathan. And he is known for humility, of course, as all the Carolites are known for, as all the Carolites are known for humility. Professor MSG was a great chemist and a very approachable person, and he used to work on circadian rhythms, something related to the functioning of a brain. Rhythm. There is rhythm, isn't it? There is rhythm in nature. There is rhythm in how our brain functions. There is a brain research center in IIT Madras. Of course, it has come up very recently while the preacher was a scholar at IIT Madras during 2002 to 2010. There was nothing like a brain research center. Professor MSG was doing some fundamental work on circadian rhythms, and only to that extent, the preacher knows something about the functioning and study related to brain. And while he moved from IIT Madras to Israel, in Israel there was a dedicated center for brain research. There was a dedicated center for brain research. Israelis are doing outstanding work in mapping the functioning of brain, the thinking process, the thought process. Israel has advanced so much in nanotechnology. Nanotechnology is the application of very small objects, nanomachines, nanomachinery that could be biocompatible and that could be substituted for organs that could facilitate the functioning of artificial organs that could sense the phenomena that are happening in human organs. Nanotechnology has advanced so much, and Israel has contributed so much to nanotechnology. Brain mapping of dreams. Of course, from Bible we can know that dreams are real. Even from the personal experience of the preacher, he himself has dreamt certain things and observed the dreams coming to reality at a later point of time. There are such innumerable examples of dreams as predecessors of future happenings. Future happenings are made known to certain people a priori before their actual happening. And dreams are one of the ways in which God accomplishes his plans, his wish. whether it is in the life of Joseph, or whether it is in the life of Jacob, or whether it is in the life of Daniel. Daniel dreamt. Rather, Daniel did not dream. Rather, the king during the times of Daniel, while Daniel was in exile in Babylon, the dream, the king dreams dreams, the king dreams a dream and asks the wise men in Babylon to reveal the meaning of the dream. But the problem here is the king dreams the dream and forgets all about what he has dreamt. This is the issue. And all the wise men of Babylon were put to test. If you do not tell me the dream that I have dreamt while I was sleeping in the night, you will be put to death warrant. All the wise men, all the black magicians, all the sorcerers, all the witchcraft practitioners, all the practitioners of black magic were very frightened, very afraid. Children like stories. That is why the preacher is adopting stories to convey the message. While the preacher was about to complete his 1 year tenure at JSF's university, the preacher was active until the last day. He was as enthusiastic as in his last day of teaching as he was in the first day of teaching. The preacher has been blessed to be highly active on YouTube because the preacher intends that the knowledge that God has given to him should be useful to future generations. When we have a record of such experience in the form of YouTube messages, in the form of books, in the form of publications, in the form of digital objects, that will be very useful for future generations. Science is such a wonderful endeavor. The research papers that are composed by great people, Nobel laureates like Professor Sir C.V. Raman in the year 1928, are accessible to each one of us even today, isn't it? This was not so few decades ago. There has been a great revolution in knowledge explosion. 3 decades ago, 4 decades ago, there has been no revolution in electronic equipment, electronic machinery. Like, the advent of computers has changed the course of human future drastically. Things were made very easy, things were made very fast. All these things were foretold, by the way, all these things were foretold. And particularly, there was some specific books in the Bible that are related to the future. Especially the book of Daniel is full of prophecies, and many prophecies have been fulfilled, and yet to some prophecies are yet to be fulfilled. For example, what all that has been told by Daniel regarding the dream of Nebuchadnezzar has been fulfilled, and some of the story is ongoing and some of the story is yet to be fulfilled. Means we are reading the last chronicles of the planet Earth. This is what the preacher precisely says. The preacher, the Israel that the preacher has seen during 2010 to 2016 is very different from the Israel that the preacher is seeing in 2023 and 2024. How many years have passed from 2016 to 2024? Hardly 7 years, hardly 8 years. Within these 7 years, within these 8 years, things have changed to worst. For example, political uncertainty. There has never ever been such unstable governance in Israel. In the course of history of Israel, there has never ever been such a instability in the governance. All through the 6 years that the preacher has been in Israel, there has been a very, very stable government by uh, Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu being the Prime Minister of Israel. From 2016 till now, there has been no stable government. There have been many uh, changes, uncertainties. Of course, we have seen COVID. We have seen so much loss of life that has never seen during the times when the preacher was there in Israel. The preacher has seen an altogether a different Israel. Even though there were disturbances at the border, there has never been an absence of peace in Israel, throughout Israel. Why? Why this sudden change in a very short span of 7 years? This is because we are indeed reading the last chronicles of planet Earth. There are some books in the Bible that focuses on the future happenings. One is the book of Daniel. The dream of Nebuchadnezzar was partially, of course, the dream is related to rise and fall of various kingdoms in human history on planet Earth. And there are some things that are yet to be fulfilled. The Nebuchadnezzar, the king, or Babylon is a statue, and the great statue made up of different metals, and at the feet there was a mix of clay and some metal. Means this is unstable government, unstable governance. And Daniel, in one of the sentences, one of the verses in the book of Daniel says one thing. He was very particular about one thing regarding knowledge explosion. Why the preacher is taking the pain of preaching? Because these days nobody has the time to read all the 66 books. Really, isn't it? Isn't it? We are so busy with Kalki. We are so busy with many other sources of entertainment, mass media, because 3 decades ago or 4 decades ago there has never been an explosion in information and technology and mass media. There used to be hardly 1 hour out of 24 hours. There used to be news channel from the New Delhi, and that's it. And later on, regional channels cropped up, and even during 80s and 90s, the regional channels were hardly broadcasted for 1 hour or 2 hours. That's all. And today, if we see all through the 24 hours, there has been hundreds of channels. Our children are exposed to so much of violence, so much of many cartoons, many violent movies, many things related to violence, because neither the parents nor the children have time for one another in good olden days. Olden days means not so old. Few decades ago, 2 decades ago, 3 decades ago, what was the scenario? What was the lifestyle? There used to be joint families. If not joint families, at least the parents were allowed to stay with their children. At least grandparents were allowed to stay in the home. Nowadays, we see so many old age homes. Nowadays, both wife and husband are working, so they do not have time for the elders. They think that the presence of elders in their house is a disturbance to their privacy, because now we are accustomed to apartment culture. We hardly have walls separating us, and everything is so visible, everything is so easily heard. Moreover, we are not as transparent as we have been few decades ago. There have been many secret issues. There have been many personal things. Neither the parents nor the children have time for one another, for communicating, for sharing their love. Grandparents were considered as untouchable people and were sent to old age homes, if not being made to fall in the bathrooms and break their legs, fracture their legs, and sent to graveyard. These are real. These are real happenings. Because human mind is desperately wicked. Human heart is desperately wicked. That's what. అంత్య దినములలో అపాయకరమైనటువంటి కాలములు సంభవించును. అంత్య దినముల్లో ప్రేమలు చలారిపోవును. ఇన్ ద లాస్ట్ డే పెరిలస్ టైమ్స్ విల్ కమ్. ఇన్ ద లాస్ట్ డేస్ there will be no love. There will be no love for one another. Everybody will be for their own good. We are two and we have one. Family planning. We don't want our parents to stay with us. This is not the situation in good olden days. In Israel, the Israel that the preacher has seen is very different from the Israel what the preacher is seeing now. During COVID, many of the old age people were killed. But it was not so during 2002 or 2010 and 2016. The old people were cared for. The old people were cared for. They used to have caregivers. The old people, especially, when they are old, when they are not able to move on their own, there will be a caregiver from foreign countries, especially from Philippines, from India, and from some other countries. Some young people will be employed so that they can have sufficient patience, sufficient time, sufficient strength to provide their services of care to the old people. Philippines are especially very loving people. Of course, Indians can adjust to any climate, any surroundings, even harsh Middle East environments. Indians are very patient. Indians used to work as caregivers. Philippines used to work as caregivers. And these Philippines used to have a beautiful prayer gathering in a church called Saint Peter's Church. Saint Peter's Church. Another beautiful thing regarding the Jewish nation Israel is there is perfect freedom. There is perfect freedom with the dresses we wear, with the language we speak, with the faith we practice. There has never ever been any restriction. This is Jewish nation. Christianity should not be practiced. Such restrictions were never present in Israel. This is the kind of Israel that the preacher has seen. मजहब नहीं सिखाता आपस में बैर रखना मजहब नहीं सिखाता आपस में बैर रखना हिंदी है हम वतन है. Of course, we know all the full song composed by Muhammad Iqbal. Such great poets were born in India. In Israel, there is absolute religious freedom, and these Philippines that were working as caregivers to the Jewish old people were very loving, and especially they used to have a beautiful prayer gathering as soon as the Shabbat is ended. Shabbat ends by Saturday 6 p.m. in the evening. As soon as the sun sets, the Shabbat ends. This is another remarkable thing that the preacher has seen that he has never seen in India, that he has never seen in Korea, that he has never seen in China. What is that? Shabbat. Shabbats are so memorable, Shabbats are so pleasant, Shabbats are so sweet. Unfortunately, a sad thing has happened in on a Shabbat morning. I do not know why such evil things happen only on Shabbats. Jagrata, 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 Jagrata. Be careful. This is what the mother bird says to the little ones. While the mother bird in the nest, there are little ones that have been recently hatched. And these little small beautiful birds, the mother bird says, be careful, be careful, be careful. Jagrata, 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 Jagrata. Parents tell to the school going children, Be careful while you are riding your bicycle. Be careful while going to school. Be careful while returning from the school. Do not speak to any strange people. If there's strange people ask you to come on their vehicle for giving you ride, do not go on their vehicle. Be careful with the strangers. These are all the instructions that the parents give to the children, because kidnapping of children has happened in Israel. So the parents, that is not only in Israel, everywhere. In African nations also, we see school children being kidnapped, because these are the things related to uh, non-equal distribution of resources, non-equal distribution of riches. Someone is having a lack, someone is having hunger, someone is having deficiencies, someone is not cared for, someone is not listened for, and that someone is getting transformed as a radical for money, a radical for a piece of bread. This is what is being addressed by the gospel. Gospel converts people. Gospel converts people. Gospel cares for the radicals. At one point of time, there has been a news article on Mother Teresa, and it states that Mother Teresa states that the dictators are the children of God. Entirely the out of context, Mother Teresa was quoted. The news piece says that Mother Teresa says that the dictators are the children of God. Then the journalist asked Mother Teresa, Mother, have you seen the news today? The news headline says that you are with the dictators, you are taking the side of the dictators that oppress people, that are violent, that are cruel. And it was said that you have stated that the dictators are the children of God. Then the mother, in all her humility, says, I doesn't mean that, but I'm happy that in the Chinese news media, the name God appeared, because it was so few decades ago, 3 decades ago or 4 decades ago, uh, uttering the name God is regarded as very difficult, means uh, being an issue of being criminalized, being penalized, because practicing faith in God was not so free in China few decades ago. Of course, I have never seen that thing with my own eyes, but the preacher has heard that practicing religion in China is not free, and there have been severe restrictions. These are the things that the preacher has heard while he was a schoolboy. But when he has landed in China during 2019, April 14, uh, what the preacher has seen has really astonished. It's quite astonishing. It's diagonally opposite to what the preacher has seen in Israel. What all the preacher has seen in the Bible has come to reality, and the preacher could find Bible being in front of his eyes all through his 6 years of stay in Israel. In contrast, in China, the situation was entirely opposite to what the preacher has heard. The preacher has been told that practicing religion will tax him much. There is no free practice of religion, there is no religious freedom, and the kind of government is a dictatorial government, and the people are really oppressed. There is no absolute freedom for the citizens in China. These are all the things that the preacher has heard from outside. But when the preacher has landed in China, even in scientific regime, even in science because the preacher has been a chemist, a doctor in chemistry, and the preacher has has been hearing that in China, the Chinese research is very difficult. The Chinese researchers go through hard times. They will be subjected to extra hard work. The supervisors of Chinese researchers will be very, very demanding, will be very, very harsh. They work for longer time. The work environment is not at all friendly, not at all conducive. The work environment will be very, very difficult, very demanding, very challenging. Uh, all these things were heard by the preacher. But when the preacher has landed in China, the things were diagonally opposite and everything was different. There is absolute freedom, religious freedom, first of all. Chinese government is democratic, not dictatorial. As the name of the country says, People's Republic of China. People's Republic of China. Indeed, the government there in China was favorable to the people. The Chinese government was absolutely favorable for uh, people and the development of people, growth of people. There is absolute freedom, and the people were living in prosperity, in joy, in happiness, and there is no difficulty as far as homelessness, poverty, and basic needs are concerned. The Chinese were provided well with the basic amenities. The employment opportunities are not very low as we see in India. The educated people were well paid off, and there is absolute religious freedom, and preaching of gospel can be practiced without any fear. There have been churches that are flourishing well, and the church uh, has absolute freedom. And all these things could happen because of good people like Mr. Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping has been ruling ruling China for over 15 years, I suppose, and he has been taking good policies, ensuring food security, ensuring job security, ensuring economic security. Of course, China has seen many difficult times during 21 and 22 during the preacher was there in China, and COVID virus has broken down in Wuhan, and the Chinese government took all the measures in the favor of people to help the people. Indeed, it's not so easy. It's not so easy. Mr. Xi Jinping from Beijing used to send vehicles, trucks full of food, trucks full of clothing. As a leader, he did his best. Those were really, really difficult times, and such difficult COVID virus, breakdown of such COVID virus is very new for our generation, isn't it? But it is all foretold in the Bible. We need to be very, very careful. We are in a difficult time, and as I told you, the Israel that the preacher has seen during 2010 to 2016 is very different from the Israel that the preacher is seeing. Pray for the peace over Israel. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem, because Jerusalem's peace is your peace. If Jerusalem is in peace, Iran will be in peace. If Jerusalem is in peace, America will be in peace. If Jerusalem is in peace, all the global nations will be in peace. It is so because Jerusalem is the throne of God. Mount Zion is the throne of God. The royal diadem of God is present over there. Nothing is equal to Jerusalem. Nothing is equal to Jerusalem. Jerusalem's peace is your peace. All the 66 books of Bible have reached the world from Jerusalem in the times. when there is no mass media, when there is no mass communication, when there is no transport, and is this has been made possible because of jealous people like apostles like Paul. Many say that Paul is not apostle. Apostle means the one that has seen Jesus Christ, the one has heard the words of Jesus Christ proceeding from the mouth of Jesus Christ. We have in the Bible four gospels. The four gospels are Matthew, Gospel according to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the Apostle. These four books that are the first four books in the New Testament are called Gospels. Rather, the preacher says that all the books in the Bible are Gospels. All the books in the Bible are Gospels. Did Peter not hear the words that have proceeded from the mouth of Jesus Christ? Then why this discrimination? Why the old man, the grand old man Peter should be discriminated? It is because Peter is illiterate that Peter's works are not called Gospels. These are not toxic statements. People think that the preacher is making some revolutionary statements. This is just a different perspective. Why not? Why not only some should be given the opportunity to preach? There are two physicians in the house of prayer. Only one physician is given the opportunity to preach, while not the other. Both are like two eyes to the preacher. It's not that. These are not toxic statements. These are only different perspectives. Means no one should be divide. No one should be less explored. The talents of each of the church members should be explored. There has been an argument in the church, in the early church. These toxic statements, what we think are not really toxic. These are only different perspectives in the church. Such perspectives will come up. In the good olden days, there used to be an argument that the widows are neglected in the church, that the foreigners were neglected in the church. Thanks to God that there are no foreigners in a house of prayer. Adia. All are native people. Within the native people, there are so many conflicts. If foreigners were to be there, only God knows what will be the fate of the preacher. We don't want this preacher. We should. We want a different preacher. If foreigners were to be there, we want an American preacher. We want a preacher from Israel. Thanks, thanks be to God that there are no foreigners in a house of prayer church. And the arguments are like this: the widows are neglected, the foreigners are neglected. And the arguments are like this: only one physician is given the opportunity to preach, and the other physician is not given the opportunity to preach. Only the preacher can say, the pastor can say that we do not have any distinction or grudge for the other physician. Only thing is, the other physician is not willing to preach. If we ask the pastor, then we will get the truth. Unless and otherwise, we speak to the pastor regarding how the church has grown over decades, we will not really have the true account. So there are many such misconceptions in the early church. Why the widows should be neglected? Why only one widow should be given financial assistance? The other widow should not be given. The pastor has some special pity with this widow and not that widow. There is nothing like that for the pastor. All the members of the church are the same. All the members of the church are the same. The apostles were wise, and the apostles have said that, yes, your observations are correct. Some are neglected. So, what do we recommend is choose for yourself some religious people, some people of good repute, and depute a specific number of people on the work of charity so that the widows and the foreigners will be widows, orphans, and foreigners will be met with their regular needs. And Stephen was one among the righteous people. chosen to assist the widows. But the preachers were very, very clear. The preachers, the pastors, the shepherds, or the flock have said very clearly, we will give ourselves to preaching and prayer because our pulpit and the prayer closet should be heard one from the other. Our pulpit and the prayer closet should be heard by one by the other. They should be close to each other. If we involve ourselves in charity, if we involve ourselves in feeding the orphans, feeding the widows, caring for the foreigners, the very existence of the church will be at peril. The very existence of the church will be at peril. The roots will be corrupted. To prevent the roots from corruption, to ensure that the foundations are not shaken, we have to give ourselves to prayer and preaching. This is the work of the pastor. This is the work of the preacher. Depute from among yourselves some seven righteous people so that they will be taking care of the charity in house of prayer. Good charity work is also being done for providing provision to the hungry, to the poor, to the needy, to the orphans, taking care of medical needs by running medical facilities, by running schools. This is the work of the righteous people, not the work of the pastor. The pastor is dedicated for anointed for caring for preaching, caring for prayer and preaching. We give ourselves for preaching and prayer, our prayer closet and the pulpit should be heard from one another. If we have any arguments, if you have any complaints, these people like Stephen will take care, approach them. This is the very reason why Paul has chosen to preach the gospel. So, if the works of Mark, Luke, John, Matthew, what we call gospels, why not the work of Peter? What harm did the old man do that his works are not regarded as gospels? In the perspective of the preacher, all the 27 books are gospels, isn't it? Gospel, what is a gospel basically? Good news. If the first books were to be gospels, the rest of the 23 books are not gospels, not good news. All are gospels. There are no bad newses. All are gospels. Because Peter was there with Jesus Christ, because John the Apostle was leaning on the bosom of Jesus Christ, there have been serious arguments that Shaul, converted as Paul, should not be considered as an apostle, should not be allowed to preach. Why only one physician should be allowed to preach and why not the other? Fortunately, there were people like Barnabas in the church that supported Paul. No, 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 Paul is not good person. Paul has a very bad character, bad reputation. Bad character should not be the reason for preventing someone to not to work for the Lord. No, no, no. Paul's reputation, we know he is such a radical. Because someone is a radical, he should not be denied an opportunity to become better. This is what is called conversion. This is what is preached by the gospel. No, 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 no. Paul's character is not good. Whose character is good? Is your character good? Have you seen your face in the mirror? Have you seen your face in the mirror of the Word of God? Is your character good? What about you? No, no, no. Paul is not a good person. He killed many people. But there were good people like Barnabas in the church that trusted in Paul and supported Paul and helped Paul in all his missionary works. And we see the fruit of the works of Paul standing the test of time. It is the characteristic of the preacher's sermons that they go hours together and the audience will sit hours together. Praise be to God. May the Lord grant his continue to grant his audience to the preacher. May the Lord give grace to all the audience. In the precious name of Jesus, I pray. Amen.